our splines.
All right, we are live. Welcome to the Affray community event. It is a very chilly winter. We have blizzards all across the nation, but the coldest storm is yet to hit as the much anticipated update for SCP-5K is right around the corner. It is coming next week. We have finally unveiled the fearsome SCP-610. And because you guys have been so patient, we are here for a very special evening with Trey Bishop.
Hello?
And we also have a very special guest, Dr. Sherman from Site 42.
Good afternoon, SCP Foundation staff and the greater SCP community.
Unfortunately, Bowman was originally supposed to be in this event. He was not able to attend, so Trey will be filling in for him. But we have all kinds
We'll get him out of 106's pocket dimension soon enough.
But we are here to discuss the GOC lore because, as we were talking about earlier, it is apparently very extensive. Sherman, you were telling me that the GOC lore is so extensive that it almost had a splinter wiki that was as big as the SCP wikis.
Well, I would say it never got quite that big. What had happened was they started the GOC in an early article, and then because it had a very different mood from the original wiki, the SCP community is very horror and bureaucracy focused. And the GOC is very much what we would define as tactical. And so we like to call them tactical wizards. And so once that community got up and running along the author community and people got that vibe, they did in fact start a global occult coalition wiki. And although it did get some momentum going, some steam, due to some self-professed issues with management, they decided to scrub that and move it back as to a different branch of the proper SCP wiki, and it became the Global Occult Coalition Hub.
So wizards with guns. Does that mean the
my favorite kind of wizard?
Does that mean the GOC was firing magic missiles? How did that look like in the beginning of the SCP wiki? Or the GOC wiki?
So let me give a little credit where credit's due before I start my big spiel. I did a lot of my research going into the Global Occult Coalition fresh, because I'm a very SCP Foundation focused researcher, not just in the community, but also on the Foundation itself. I don't often branch out to the groups of interest, and I got a big taste of what it's like to be a new community member, because it is hard to find the important details when you're digging into the other GOIs, unless you already know what you're doing and you've been writing for them for a while. So I'd like to credit, for YouTube side of things, Dr. Sumerian and SCP Explained, I believe, and the Exploring series especially, for their depictions of GOC kind of starter explainers. And then huge props to original OG Dr. Clef, the author from the wiki, who responded to my call and gave me an essay of work that completely made most of my research obsolete. So Clef, you are the chowder man today. But with that in mind, what you're going to see more in GOC lore is because it's got this tactical sort of setting, you're going to have a team of specialists. And so your different operators on a team are there because they have different roles. You have your guy who's the gun guy. You have your guy who's the hacker. And you have the guy who's shooting magic missile. Now, maybe gun guy has some SCP weapons, although they would call them by their terminology. They wouldn't call them SCPs. But they'll have anomalous weapons. But most of the time, you've got your line in the sand between the operator who's doing guns, the operator who's doing tech, and the operator who's doing wizardry.
So, all right. So, like the GOC, there's like actually defined tactical roles where there's like the tactical mage, there's the actual gun guy. This is super fascinating.
Indeed, indeed.
So, what does like a GOC squad like look like? Given that they're like these kind of like defined roles. Um,
Well, I can give you a good one because, once again, our good friend Dr. Clef wrote his own squad back in the day. And this squad, if you're interested in looking it up, is called Assessment Team Sparkplug. And on Assessment Team Sparkplug, these are Clef's ground level team, so you know what it's like working in the low level Global Occult Coalition. And we've got 4 agents on hand. We've got Agent Bullfrog, who is your hardcore soldier, big guy, bald head, black dude, deep special ops stuff, tier 1 operator, absolute professional, Call of Duty hero character. Then you've got your secondary, Skunk Boy, who is a Marine Corps Terminal Lance near dropout who joined the military to be all that you can be, but found out he's a bad fit for their culture. He is essentially a Call of Duty player instead of a Call of Duty hero. Kitten, outing Clef as a tall muscle mommy enjoyer, is a tall muscle mommy genetic anomaly that the Global Occult Coalition doesn't feel is dangerous enough to put down. Because remember, the GOC is not just destroy, destroy, destroy. Sometimes they will keep anomalies if they're helpful or not at least detrimental to mankind. So Kitten is peak human performance level, not quite superhero. And she is a physical bruiser in that sense. And then her other character trait written here is that she is the type who, when the mission gets too rough, she actively erases her own memory to avoid the trauma, leaving herself 51st dates notebooks filling her in on what she thinks she needs to know later.
Oh, so she's got like a memento kind of way of processing field experience.
Every other mission with her is your first mission.
So,
and then your last team member, just to throw it down, Spider is a trans lady who underwent magical identity reassignment that erased her previous male self and replaced it with a female self. Just in case you didn't think SCP was woke back in the day, it's always been woke. And she is a occultist. She is the staff wizard and the newbie of the team. So she's kind of like the point of view character. And you get these wizard, elves, dwarves stories, but wearing, as he says, LL Bean shirts and drinking Japanese whiskey.
And so I guess for layman's, some people like me who are familiar with SCP through cultural osmosis, but aren't necessarily super experts in all the various facets of lore, what organizationally separates the SCP Foundation from the GOC? Because we had like a really cool model showcase where they kind of talked about it. Like compared to the UIU, the GOC's better funded. They speak the language of biblical angels. They've got awesome plankton suits, biosuits. But how does that compare to like the Foundation, which is obviously huge?
So comparing the SCP Foundation to the GOC, a way to consider it is, the SCP Foundation is not sanctioned by any government entity. The Foundation will work with you. We have agents that spy on you, but we're not exactly on the best terms with all the world governments. They have to work with us because we're good at what we do. Our funding comes from unknown benefactors, all of this shadow organization business. Meanwhile, the Global Occult Coalition was founded in coordination with the United Nations after what we call the Seventh Occult War, and what we call in real life World War II. And so during World War II, there's all this anomalous business that we don't know about in the background. And before the GOC existed, it was a team up of 108 different smaller anomalous organizations. And they all beat the Nazi anomaly crew, who are called Obscura Corps, although they stood around a little after the war too, and they had to be beaten down a couple more times. But after the war ended for real, the 108 joined into the Global Occult Coalition on behalf of the UN. And so they are much more politically minded. They work with over national borders, working with countries on the proper. They are subsidiaries. And it is a whole... There are a lot of people who would say that if you look at it hard enough, the Global Occult Coalition are actually the protagonist of the Foundation verse, and that the Foundation are some shadowy villains in the background.
So they're a little bit more heroic in the sense that, like, they don't necessarily want to contain all the SCPs for nefarious purposes. They will straight up eliminate SCPs that are viewed as threats to humankind.
Yeah, the Foundation's move on anomalies is that we are going to maintain normalcy first and foremost. We are going to contain anomalies no matter what because of that. And we're going to do research on them first and foremost. We will not destroy them if we don't have to. And that leads to a lot of containment breaches. It leads to loss of personnel. It leads to public issues that we then have to clean up. And the Global Occult Coalition sees us as irresponsible. And so when they're doing their whole anomalous world interactions, they are containing things when they need to. But if an anomaly is not hurting humanity or not breaching secrecy, they just let that thing go. There are a lot of humanoids they just let do their thing as long as they're not causing a muss. It's only when an anomaly is proving dangerous to society at large or threatening to breach secrecy that they go through the trouble of containment and or destroying it.
So would you say that the GOC and Foundation have an antagonistic relationship, where they kind of like see each other as like they respect each other?
Both. We are begrudging rivals who are trying to accomplish the same thing through different means. It's very Goku and Vegeta energy. They're going to work together when they have to, but they're not going to be happy about it. And at the end of the day, we're going to go our separate ways and screw off in the meantime.
So here's... I admire you for how clean of a comparison that was, despite the fact that it was Dragon Ball as a comparison.
Well, all right.
It was plain as day.
I gotta like...
I'm here to meet the people where they are, okay?
So I gotta like, you know, throw a little bit of gasoline on this fire. Who's the Goku and who's the Vegeta?
Oh, well, it's subjective, right? But the main thing you need to know is that in the SCP Wiki, it's important, I want to point out, if we're going to be doing the Dragon Ball thing, that the number of SCPs that exist, it's over 9,000.
Oh, you monster! How could you?
Bringing in the old school memes, the old 2000s internet culture.
So
it's a good question.
To answer your question, the Foundation is going to believe they are Goku because they've been around longer. A lot of sources put the Foundation being founded in the 1800s. Sometimes the early 1800s, going back to like Old West times or even earlier, and then it evolves over time. Whereas we know the Global Occult Coalition was only formed less than 100 years ago. So they're little bro the whole way to the Foundation. And they can disrespect our methods, but at the end of the day, we know better because we've been around the block. Meanwhile, the Global Occult Coalition is going to believe that they are the Goku because they are I believe, a larger organization. I mean, you take 108 smaller organizations and you allow them to work together under the UN, it's going to be easier to coalesce and form a troop. Plus, they are way more likely to use anomalous means in their troops. They've got their tactical wizards. They've got all of the different paratech that they've farmed. Meanwhile, the Foundation has some anomalous arms that we put out in public, but Our attempt to form a team with Abel and Iris and all of them blew up in our faces. Our attempt to, I think Samsara is our biggest victory, the Power Rangers Mobile Task Force. And even then, there's a lot of background and trauma there, to the point where it seems like the Global Occult Coalition has done a much better job integrating tech and anomalies into their battle processes.
So who is like their all right, so we're getting some Jurassic Park tactical dinosaur energy. Another terrible analogy. What are the anomalies that the GOC have effectively been able to weaponize and kind of add as like part of their tactical units?
The most important one they have is their ability to wield literal magic in the field, seemingly just consistently. As Clef told me earlier today, they have what they call the MIT. If Hogwarts was MIT, a wizard school, they call it the ICSUT, the International Center for the Study of Universal Thaumatology. And they study magic as if it's a science, and they teach you how to wield the powers of the universe in your own hands. And I know for a fact that while the Foundation may have some thaumatologists and even alchemists sometimes on set, we do not have as deep a roster of these wizards that we can just put out in public to accomplish tasks. We've got to be a little stricter with our resources in that sense.
Ah, oh, that's unfortunate. The SCP doesn't get like literal wizards, but does the GOC have like a 173 that like, you know, all right, pull out Delta 1073 is good getting in, or is just like who cares about you know, killing concrete? It's better to just be able to do wizardry.
I mean, point of order, we don't deploy 173 in the field. We keep that thing locked in its box where it belongs. We're not going to wield it as a weapon.
Well, you try to keep it contained, I guess.
Okay, bro. We do a damn good job considering the amount of poop and feces and blood, two of those things are the same things, that we constantly have to clean up and defend ourselves by not blinking. We're doing pretty well for our circumstances.
So ultimately, the SCP Foundation wants to keep them contained, while the GOC is a little bit more elastic in its overview. I guess, who would you say are like in the current wiki are like the power players of the GOC? Who's running the organization outside of that squad you told us about a few minutes ago?
So that squad from earlier, the Spark Plugs, are a low-level team. They're your basic team in the GOC lore. And then when it comes to power players in the GOC lore, I don't have a lot of intel on much, because part of the problem of SCP work when it comes to the wiki is that there's such a breadth, and people who are the authors write about whatever they're interested in. And so even when you look at the SCP side of things, where things are much more established, you've got the doctors everyone knows about, Clef, Gears, Kondraki before he got retired, so on and so forth. And they're only in thus many stories. They're not really main characters of a canon the same way that, you know, the lead character in a book series is. But the two big ones that Clef was able to point me at are that Dr. Clef himself from SCP Foundation.wiki used to be a GOC operative in his early days. And there's a lot of lore around how he was a GOC operative and ended up at the Foundation, relating to his family. He had an affair with a fairy and had a daughter and saved the world, and had to bring the daughter to a convent and then brought it to the Foundation because the convent couldn't handle its abilities. And that means that we're dealing with what everyone knows as the overarching fan lore is SCP-166, otherwise known as Mary. And that is, to many, Clef's daughter and a whole bunch of things. Oh, hello, desk in the chat. You're going to check me on this, aren't you? You monster. You showed up right at the right moment to make my day hard.
Uh-oh.
But moving on from Clef so I can protect myself. The other big tippy top level staff in the coalition that you have to worry about is DC Alfine. And DC Alfine is their resident scary lady. And you are talking about a person who is, they're the undersecretary for the GOC, answers to the top level and no one else, and is giving you all the business below her. And she has no known identity. Her identity is completely anonymous because she can wear other people's faces. And usually her using of doing that is old-timey movie actresses. And so, as Clef tells me here, she'll wear Lauren Bacall, Audrey or Katharine Hepburn, Grace Kelly, etc. And the staff of the GOC know that if she's wearing certain faces, you better be worried. If she shows up wearing the face of Katharine Hepburn, you know she's mad at you.
Do you think those faces have like an expiration date? I mean, they're pretty old sounding.
I mean, we're doing these in after 1940 and so on, and I'm assuming modern times based on the most likely canon of the Foundation is pretty modern day. So she's been around a bit, and I assume if she can change her form like that, she can adjust her biological processes to allow herself to elongate her life as well.
So, is it just like a choice that she does? She only goes for old actresses? Does she like, could she update it and have Zendaya?
I think Zendaya would have to put on a hell of a performance to make it into the roster.
Oh,
but I'm not going to throw it against her. The girl's got range.
I see. So she's got class in terms of who she picks.
I assume it's the kind of thing where, like, you know, when it's long-lived entities of any kind, they kind of get stuck in their ways. They get stuck in their time. Vampires are always of the pop culture of their own day, and they don't understand these darn kids' references from 300 years later. I assume it's that kind of thing.
So, one of the most pivotal locations in 5K lore and GOC lore is Ganir, which sounds really cool. I believe it's the GOC's operation base. What can you tell me about Ganir? Because all the little details come out. I know it has like this mythical thing, and in the original 5K article, there's this incredible the Battle of Ganir.
Well, this should be interesting.
So here's the thing. I asked Clef about this specifically because I knew it was going to come up, because after 5K, the article dropped. Ganir was built up as this big, huge mythological thing. This is the GOC's last bastion. It's so big and important. And that was the first time Ganir was ever mentioned in the lore. It's brand new. There's nothing about it before then. At least from what I can tell. Maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like the consensus is Ganir started in SCP-5000, and there's only like 2 other mentions on the wiki. Maybe 3 now.
It sounds
I've heard rumors. I've heard rumors that there's a lot of information that's been posted about Ganir often, but usually seconds after it shows up, it gets taken down. I don't know why.
Because what happens a lot is that, when something big like that comes up, the thing that makes it cool is that you only know the tiniest piece, and in a way that makes it seem badass. On top of that, when people start to like elucidate upon that, we have the same problem with SCP that happens on many other online communities, is people start to write their fan fiction, which, don't get it wrong, SCP is a fan fiction site. It's not that deep, y'all. It's just gotten big and it's got some quality control. And so, when people start to write their extra theories about Ganir, it'll usually be in a very low-level, typo-ridden kind of situation where it's just telling you how badass Ganir is, but there's not really a story there, and it gets deleted really quickly. It's not like people on the wiki are trying to keep Ganir vague. It's that people got to write stories about Ganir that hold up to the somewhat quality tier of letting other people on the wiki vote on it.
Mhm.
So
Well, I don't want to like. I don't. Hmm?
you have a thought, Trey? I just
Oh, I was just gonna say. I mean, I don't want to like stir the pot or anything, but if anyone here has noticed, you never see Ganir and Isaac in the same room together.
Very interesting.
uh, Ganir to me feels like this like piece of lore where everyone's kind of like they want like the battle of Minas Tirith. They want the battle of Helm's
Yeah.
Deep. They want like whatever your favorite sci-fi movie battle is of all time, it needs to live up to that. But because of that high spectrum, I guess it sounds like everyone's kind of afraid to like have something be as canon in terms of like what Ganir is.
Yeah, I think one day it'd be cool if maybe a video game company one day will make something with it.
Oh, who
Maybe that'll
knows?
happen. Who could possibly tell? I will
day,
tell you
maybe.
this. As a predecessor to Ganir, it was revealed to me today, once again by our dear friend Clef, that while he didn't write for Ganir because it's obviously very brand new in the scheme of things, back in the day, GOC had a base on Pluto. A secret Pluto base.
A Pluto base.
And the secret Pluto base is essentially like the International Space Station, but it sucks ass. It's where they send everything that's too dangerous to be set loose, or they can't kill it. And so it's just sent to Pluto for storage. And if you're stuck on Pluto duty, God help you.
God, I hope Ganir doesn't wind up becoming Pluto. But that does ring a really interesting question. And you being like one of the top SCP lore authorities, SCP is always kind of like, it's all fan fiction, but what sort of like makes elements kind of become canon in the wikis? Just like when people love an idea, what is the invisible line where it turns something from like, you know, I want these two SCPs to make out towards, oh my god, Ganir is so cool. I want to learn this is official.
I would say that level 1 becoming a core piece of canon in the world of There Is No Canon. Level 1 notoriety is when the author community embraces it, because when you get the interest of the other authors, they are more likely to write more about the thing, and that means that you are more likely to see canonized lore because everything on the wiki is canon in one way or another. And so if you can get the imagination of the authors going, you're more likely to see more works about it, meaning that you've successfully disseminated your idea into the public consciousness. But stronger than level 1, getting the author's attention, level 2 is when you get the public's attention. And so a small little article about an infinite IKEA becomes a pop culture monster. Ganir, a footnote in a much longer article, captures the public's imagination in a way that no author could have ever engineered on purpose. It's just, here's this thing people really latched onto, you never know what it's going to be, and now everyone knows about it somehow. And public opinion is probably the strongest tonic for making something a canon ideal in the SCP fan and canon sphere.
So you need to get a certain threshold of fan art, and you also need to have the authors kind of respect it. But once you get the fan art, so I guess like there's this unspoken tier. If you inspire fan art, that's great. If you get a fan animation, that's like level 2. And if you get like a mini movie, then so essentially, if you were super rich and you're like, you know, I instead of like doing evil things, I'm gonna just like make SCP canon. I'm gonna take this article and I'm gonna make like $1 million movie on it. That would be the ultimate way to like make something official.
Well, it's the funniest. threw my pen across the gosh damn room. Give me a second.
Mhm.
This is what happens when we do this on stream. You get to see the times when I drop my pen. Usually I cut and edit that out. So, yes, the difficulty for big companies coming in and doing things like this, or big angel investors, is that you also can't buy that kind of fan behavior. You end up in a situation where you invest all this money into a thing, and then the public goes, so what? There's got to be something, there's got to be a hook, and that hook is this, eternal problem of art. You never know what's actually going to click. You can use publicity to help yourself for sure. I mean, I'll tell you this, my SCP articles that I've written are 5 to 7 out of 10 at best. I think maybe my number one article on the wiki might be considered an 8 or a 9 if you're squinting. But I will not be of any illusion that the fact that my articles are as popular is because I've got a persona outside the wiki that drives people to it. And even then, my most popular wiki article is at like plus 500 upvotes, which is crazy awesome to me. But certain articles on the wiki of authors who have no social media presence and just like hang around the community can get 3 to 5 to 800 to 1,000 upvotes in a day or 3. And it's like the community likes what it likes, regardless of outside influence at that point.
The truest lesson of all art, you cannot buy culture.
Exactly.
Which, I guess that's what makes the SCP experiment so fascinating in terms of like what resonates. Is it the infinite IKEA? Is it one line about a mysterious place called Ganir? We do have some interesting questions coming in. Nej or NEJJJ on YouTube asks, does the SCP-610 have some different type of lore in the SCP-5K universe? And I believe it does, because originally SCP-610 is kept in Russia, but it's not in Russia in 5K.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for that too. Some of it has to do with the things that are happening in the story, the plot of the game, and some of it also has to do with just the simple fact of our version of the story isn't. It's not just us taking the 5,000 article and going, okay, we're turning this into a game, um, because most of that article is just from the perspective of data and information on a suit from the point of view of Pietro. And that would really just not be too exciting to play, especially for a tactical shooter game like what we're doing. So what we've done is everything that happens in our game is sort of the post reset of the 5,000 story. And whenever you think of that, a lot of people like to think of like multiverses or time travel, that kind of thing, whenever they think about time resetting. And the way I wanted to look at it was as if there's always just one kind of existence of time and reality in the world or the universe or however you want to look at it, and every atom, every tree, every person, everything that exists is just a die, and all these dice are in a cup, and if you took the cup and you shook it up and then you threw it onto the table, this is the time reset. Now a lot of those dice might end up on the same numbers that we've had before, but some of them might be different, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's nothing malicious or intentional, and that means that if the time is reset, some things might just be different, and there's not really a reason or a cause to it. It could be as simple as your neighbor's name is different and everything else is exactly the same, or Washington D.C. never existed. It just depends. Now, as far as why 610 is not in Siberia, I'm trying to think of a way to answer that because of not wanting to spoil anything for the game. Safe to say that Area 12 is a biological research and specialized containment facility. Prior to the events of this game, their purpose was to not just contain, but also to study and sort of do R&D and develop and synthesize tools and all kinds of material that they could use from the research they gathered with the anomalous entities, right? Whether that was something physical or chemical, who knows? And you know the natural conclusion you can draw there is that obviously we have we have hybrid monsters in the game already, like the Resonator. So if they were wanting to do something else, I'm sure they wouldn't have just stuck to whatever anomalies they had at their disposal directly in the facility to begin with. They probably went shopping, and they probably collected the ones that they thought would be the most interesting or useful for whatever nefarious purposes they had. And I'm sure that there were certain combinations that they wanted to explore. And Siberia is cold and all already to help contain 610, but you'd probably want even more isolation. And Antarctica seems like a good place to do that.
Does the cold climate help sort of subdue 610, or at least slow it down in a sense? Because it's like fleshy and biological. Typically, flesh, even if it's flesh that hates, does not like cold. Does that sort of affect 610's biology?
Do you mean by default, like in the wiki, or just in the game?
In the 5K lore, and also speaking, we have another prominent SCP creator. SCP Foundation Vietnam is in the chat, complete with their wonderful check mark. They had a question, and I think you maybe hinted at it, but any possibility of a Ganir-centric mission?
There's always a possibility.
There's always a possibility, but nothing can quite be confirmed right now outside of what's going down in Antarctica. So stay tuned.
Anything's possible. Anything's possible. We could have a mission about throwing sheep into a wood chipper. I don't know.
So we'll have to wait and see about the Ganir mission. Cannot confirm or deny that is classified intel at this point. But Sherman has been doing a wonderful job being a consultant on lore at Affray. I guess what has been the sort of unique elements that Affray has brought to the GOC interpretation that maybe has not been seen in the wiki article? So.
Ooh, okay. I gotta thread the needle on spoilers here. Oh boy. Let me take a little peek at what I can look at in the background docs here that is not giving away too much.
I'm just gonna sit here with my mouse over the mute button, real careful. That's
exactly. If I start to go too far astray, you let me know. But what I can say without for sure spoiling anything is a big thing you're seeing for the GOC in 5K that not only do you not have on the SCP wiki, but you don't even have for the Foundation themselves, is in making a game that includes soldiers of the GOC, you have to answer a lot of questions about their technology and weaponry and their abilities, especially with the wizard business, that you don't really see a lot of in the wiki. Because, admittedly, writers of all stripes write what they know, and not all authors on the wiki, not a majority, not even a large amount, not even a tiny amount, are weapons-trained soldiers who know things about this stuff. And so what you notice in a lot of SCP wiki stories about all the GOI is that they're very light on details about the technology being used by their forces. They go in and they might mention a special piece of paratech that is important for this one mission that they have on hand to complete the story, but you're not given great ideas into the standard loadouts of the mobile task forces, the standard loadouts of the GOC. That stuff, a lot of what we know about, say, the mobile task forces, we learned after the games of Containment Breach and others were made, because then they had to design the troops with their tech and decide, okay, they use P90s, because that's what we're going to program in. Otherwise, that isn't well established in the lore because it's not exceptionally important for the writing of the story that you're looking at. It's a detail that can be overlooked. Although, in the case of the fans, it's often the kind of thing they really want to know about, and therefore that gets elaborated through games and headcanon later on. Actually, part of the GOC's wiki that was going to be tech loadouts. And so they were going to have, this is the kind of paratech that most GOC would have. And that's because the GOC wiki was going to be more focused on an action adventure spy sort of setting in the anomalous world, rather than the SCP Foundation's bureaucratic, scientific mundanity version of things.
Oh, that's so interesting. So was the GOC wiki kind of like, have you ever heard of this weird literary genre? You know that anthology series Love, Death, and Robots?
I have not heard of that.
I'm surprised. You probably enjoy it. It's like kind of like really high budget sci-fi stories. But a lot of them are just like, you know, commando guys like fighting robot bears or aliens, or there's a lot of those stories. And I was like looking into it, where these stories come from, and apparently there's a whole literary genre called snafu. And it's basically a literary genre that is for like military literature aficionados who like it when military guys fight supernatural stuff or monsters. They basically they love Predator, and they just want to make a bunch of Predator movies. And a lot of the Love, Death, and Robots come from snafu. So I'm kind of curious: is the GOC, was it originally conceived as a tool to like create more snafu storylines?
Essentially, it sounds like, first of all, that sounds awesome, and I want to look into it because that's up my river as well. When I talked to Clef earlier about the origins of the idea for the GOC, Clef himself is a huge urban fantasy fan and into that tactical stuff. He says that originally they were written as a bunch of militant tech guys who went around shooting monsters, kind of like Delta Green or the Black Ops teams in GURPS Black Ops. And the unofficial motto was something like witches, vampires, aliens, evil gods from another dimension. We can take them all.
So, it does sound like it was like a progenitor for like snafu stories. So it was like tactical guys just basically handling stuff and going against any sort of like supernatural entity beyond human comprehension.
And he also does say that essentially it's a Tom Clancy novel if the Russians were mutants from another dimension.
Oh, that does give perspective. But well, so one thing of perspective that has been revealed in the recent dev blog that you can read right now on Steam is the GOC is equipped with mimetic vision. So how does that work? What is mimetic vision? I know you don't want to give away too much, but if you turn on, you know, mimetic vision in 5K, does that mean everyone turns into Rick Ashley and, you know, never going to give you up? It's over 9,000 memes. Does it turn everyone into Pepe faces? Like what kind of mimetic vision are we talking about here?
Oh, I wish, and I hope that someone eventually does a mod where they, when you turn it on, everyone just looks like that a gif of dancing Rick Astley. That'd be great. No, so mimetic vision is it's kind of built on the same principle as night vision in a way. We wanted to give, you know, leaning into appeasing, you know, and staying true and honoring like the wiki. We didn't want to remove all the magic, I guess you could say, from the GOC, and we wanted to keep that tactical wizard vibe. And the problem is we have a very grounded aesthetic to our game. It's a tactical shooter, and if we just gave them the ability to wield magic like wizards, then why would they need the guns, right? So we have some story reasons for why you're going in here without so much of the magic abilities, but we've tried to imbue their gear and everything with that, and using sort of the science angle to it. Um, the way night vision works is there's phosphorus that's in there, and it interacts with the light in a very specific way, and it allows you to see in the dark, right? So naturally, we assumed that in the world they could have gotten their hands on some of the similar stuff that was used to make amnestics, right? Um, and not amnestics, but amnestics, which is hard to convey just speaking it out loud. When you read it, it's much easier to see the difference. Um, but if you took something like that and you crystallized it and you crushed it up into a powder, then like phosphorus, you could create a special type of goggle that you could use that maybe would allow you to be able to see higher streams of consciousness or memories, so to speak. Um, and memories are often associated with similar concepts of ghosts, right? Which is where Ghost of the Southgate comes from. If that answers your
Oh,
question.
I was kind of wondering. So there we go. Now the title's been explained. It was funny. Me and Gooms were kind of like, "Oh wow, Ghost of the Southgate sounds pretty cool," but we're not quite sure what the Ghost of the Southgate. So that's what you're. It's literally the mimetic. Seeing through the mimetic vision is kind of showing you the ghosts.
Yeah.
We have a very interesting question from Ariox Needle on YouTube. A question: will we see continued expansion into horror themes, such as darkness becoming a more prevalent obstacle and potential hallucinations / stress / psychological horror elements? Fear, for example.
I think maybe my sound cut out or something. Can you repeat that? I missed some of it.
Yeah, of course. He asked, will we see continued expansion into horror themes such as darkness becoming a more prevalent obstacle and potential hallucination with stress, psychological horror elements, like, Fear, the game Fear, for example. RIP Monolith Soft.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that I want to do specifically that are related to the flashlight and utilizing darkness. Throughout the game in general, we want to make sure that there's different trade-offs and like reasons why you would use a flashlight or no flashlight or night vision or not, depending on the circumstances. And that's going to be a balance of making a calculated and tactical decision based on what enemies you're confronting or are afraid might exist lurking around the corner in what environments and what kind of lighting you have to deal with. And
Ooh.
Fear, by the way, was a huge inspiration. Like I loved Fear growing up, and very sad for the studios that were shut down from Warner Brothers, who some of them were responsible for creating games like Fear, which was a fantastic game. So very sad to hear about that.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. I think the worst is that they copyrighted that Nemesis system, so nobody else can use it. Now the company's gone, so now it's that was like such a cool system in Shadow of War. So, thank you for supporting independent games like SCP-5K and small teams like us that are not beholden to evil corporate bean counters.
And communities like the SCP Foundation that run on Creative Commons, where sharing things makes everyone grow better.
Exactly. That way, no one can just claim Ganir and say nobody gets to have a cool answer in Ganir due to stupid legal reasons. We did have a very two-pronged question from NGGG. Two questions. What is Dr. Sherman's favorite sci-fi movie battle, and what are the major goals of Update 016, and will the SCP-610 have unique behaviors compared to the Psi-Z zombies?
Oh, absolutely. The thing that we did with 610 was we wanted to try to finally do something that was very different and didn't rely on CQB kind of stuff. Like you can be pretty far away, and 610 can still hurt you. To put it that way.
So their behaviors. You got to be careful. And Dr. Sherman, you cannot let us not know what your favorite sci-fi horror movie is. Movie battle.
So I'm a movie guy. I love all sorts of films. I love science fiction stuff. And I think it's recency bias because I just rewatched it again recently. But I'm going to have to go with the containment breach scene of Cabin in the Woods. When they press that red button, which has no purpose existing in your sight. It was highly irresponsible to have that single red button open all the cells, might I add. Terrible protocol. But that was a pretty dope breach.
It is like a glorious scene. Did the SCP community just like go into overdrive when that movie came out? It felt like the closest thing we ever got to like having like the SCP.
What year was Cabin in the Woods? Because I don't.
2012.
It was 2011. I had not. I had not yet joined the community yet. I joined in 2013 area. And so it was already up by the way I got there. I wonder what the old heads thought of it, because it must have been how they also felt about the game Control, where it's like, this is right in with us right here. Because when I saw Control, that was 2019. I was around, and I was like, did they copied our notes, didn't they?
Oh, I've got a funny story about Control. So when I stepped into the role of directing the game here, I owned Control, but the plastic was still around the case. I'd never watched a video about it. I just knew that, vaguely what it's about, and I was interested. And I buy the games and I try to play them when I can. And for whatever reason, I never got around to it. It was because I was working on a game, and you never have time. But it was sitting on my shelf, and when I sat down with our art director Kyle one day to sort of start talking about some other parts of the facility, I said, I think it would make sense. They would probably have vacuum tubes all over the place to transport tubes of paper and documents, because it's a very bureaucratic, everything's on paper kind of thing, right? And you can't rely on digital stuff because supernatural interference. And I'm going on this whole tangent, and Kyle just sits there and he goes, "Have you ever played Control?" And I was like, "I have it, but I haven't played it yet." He goes, "You should play it." And I was like, "Okay." And the next day I came back and I was like, "Kyle, I'm really sad." Because it's everywhere in that game. And I was like, "Oh, they totally did it. They totally took it." Oh.
I need to play Control. I've heard nothing but fantastic things. Although I hear like it like bricks almost every computer, unless you've got like top of the line things. It's like such a demanding game.
I really enjoyed it on console. I am a console gamer most of the time, so PS5, it was a good ride.
It's supposed to be great on consoles. Oni Mask Pro asks, how likely are we at some point to see something like an art book or other form of documentation of the creative process for Area 12 featuring the characters and the creatures?
Ooh.
Oh, was that a me question? I thought you were talking to Sherman.
No, that's a you question, buddy. Art book, that's all you.
Art book. Well, I mean, I know we're making it. We still want to make an art book. It was one of the Kickstarter rewards. Kyle and I were actually looking at like all the art the other day, and we were like, how are we going to start like compiling this into something? Because there's so much of it. There's a ton of stuff we've actually drawn that I think it'll be cool for people to see the stuff. It's inevitably going to be that thing of like, oh, they're so dumb that they didn't put this in the game. Like, there's more complicated reasons why we decided not to, but we drew a bunch of really cool stuff that didn't quite make the cut.
I mean, I'm just saying, Control cheated off us. You could look at their art book for inspiration on how to organize it. It's only fair.
Although SCP Foundation Vietnam says, for your information, Control is a DLC literally called The Foundation.
They do, and I want to know, because I don't want to sound like I've been bitter this whole time. I love Control, and they did say in an interview that they were based on the Foundation, and I know community-wide there's a little irk that, man, it would be nice if they actually made an SCP game rather than an off-brand SCP game that they could have the IP for. But I get the company and the lingo and the corporate world, and they did turn out a pretty good project, and I'm glad from a Creative Commons sense that at least it led to something cool happening.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Although it was a little bit on the nose that in Control, I think the evil organization was called just Foundation, if I remember right.
They're the Federal Bureau of Control, which means that we get to headcanon them as a UIU, and that's why they're such failures.
Damn.
We have a very special question from a very active community member, DCR, who asks, I gotta ask Bishop, Dr. Sherman, thoughts on bananas, #justice for SCP-2761. So to let you know, we did a little interesting project here that has become very popular in our Discord server. The wonderful art director, Kyle, who does fantastic stuff, did a little creative exercise where he took SCPs that weren't necessarily going to be in the game, but to show the affray process of designing them. And he made some fantastic illustrations. One of the most beloved ones is Bananazilla. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Bananazilla?
Bananazilla is one of those things that it'd be really fun to have. But the question becomes like, do we have time? The scope is a question, especially by the time we we're able to start thinking about things like that. And is this an enemy that is going to bring something different enough to the table versus some of the other types of creatures and enemies that we have planned or that we've already made that you guys don't know about that aren't kind of in the game yet. Um, I would love to do like a DLC or something with Bananazilla if we had the opportunity. But it just kind of depends, I guess.
So, as I will always restate, if there are any millionaire out there watching this with money burning a hole in your pocket, you could always dump it to make sure Bananazilla becomes realized in all its glory. But if not, once we have Steam mod support, then the community, in true Creative Commons fashion, can bring Bananazilla in. And who knows, maybe you could like skin it over SCP-3199. But Sherman, do you have any special affection for Bananazilla?
Actually, Bananazilla is outside of the realm of my research on the wiki, outside of whispers and rumors, because I've heard the name before. So much so that when I heard the initial question, I just thought the question was, do I have any thoughts on bananas? And my first thought was, well, Dado's banana pills are not allowed on site for obvious reasons. But remembering that Bananazilla is in fact a thing, wow, yeah, that I can. I'm glad it's not stored at my site. That thing is a problem.
You don't want to have like a Jurassic Park moment where you're like, you got to feed the thing and then you just got to hope it doesn't see motion, or you use a flare to distract it.
D-class are a very useful commodity. We don't need to waste them.
But like, it's made out of banana. Maybe it doesn't digest it. Maybe you just kind of like get mushed around and then you come out of the back end and you're just fine. Just a little bit more banana bread fresh.
I'm just saying, based on your Discord chat for the stream right now, Banana Pill by Dado is a very easy Easter egg to put into your game because you just have them open the pill and take it, and then they explode into a million bananas and the entire site is flooded and it's game over. It's that quick.
So would that be possible, like, to do a Skyrim game-breaking bug where, like, when you just, like, do a Bethesda game and you load in a bajillion potatoes, you just load in a bajillion bananas, so many bananas that the game crashes?
Oh, I mean, you can kind of do that in the testing maps now, because I think I saw somebody in the community was posting images or videos. They were just spawning in all these characters, and they were just like putting so many in there. To eventually it crashed. I can't remember what it was.
We also have another question from John Henry Chow. Asks, I don't know if this question is asked, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in maintaining narrative coherence in an expansive universe such as SCP-5K?
Oh, the biggest narrative challenge has been, well, kind of two things. One, we have a split audience because it's a tactical horror game that's set in the SCP universe. So you have tactical people who play games with guns and they shoot, and they're not there for narrative games, and so they don't all care about that kind of stuff, and they also may not even know about SCP. But then you have the SCP fans who have a certain level of expectation for depth and lore and seeing the monsters, and they love just poring over documents and reading things. So two very different groups of people in play styles, and addressing that, and then discovering that really we're also introducing an ever-growing third category of player, which is people that just come into this that aren't specifically a part of either of those groups, but are just coming to this green in general. Maybe they do care about this kind of thing, but they don't know anything about SCP. And you can't just assume that anyone playing this game knows all of this stuff. And as Sherman has already stated before, the SCP wiki can be a bit nebulous and all over the place because people write what they want to write about and what they care about, and not everything's always really well connected. And not having like a specific canon to stick to, creating one that exists within the world that we're playing in, that has been probably the biggest narrative challenge. We wanted to create a game that would be forgiving and kind to players that come in green and introduce them to this world and what SCP is, but also be satisfying and engaging to SCP fans, and not be something that's forcing documents and narrative on you constantly and requiring it if you want to just jump in and shoot monsters and play with your friends. So what we've kind of decided to do was to adopt this opt-in strategy for narrative, where much like other games, I think Doom 3 did this really well, arguably. They had a lot of audio logs sitting around the facility, and it felt like a real place, and you could like pick them up and you could listen to them while you're playing. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. But we're relying on things like audio logs, being able to report things to your talk, TOC, Crow, and she will contact you by default for some things, once we get the full game completed, and those will be the things that are like kind of required, but they'll be minimal and cut down to just the bare minimum of what you need to understand your objectives and where you're going. Everything else beyond that is up to you to decide. I think that thing is interesting, or this area has some peculiar things going on. You can go and report something when the icon for the radio appears, and your level of understanding will be based on what kinds of things you think are worth reporting and learning more about. So in that way, you can choose to have as little or as much narrative as you want and play the game without having to look at everything and still know what's happening and know like what your primary objectives are. But if you want to dig into it, you totally can.
Ooh, that's always a very exciting one completed in those TOC commands. Bobcat Power has a very interesting question for you, Dr. Sherman. What are your thoughts on chat moved up? What are your thoughts on Research Projects Agency for Marriage with Anime Characters, aka PAMWAC, in the SCP universe? So is that I've heard about PAMWAC before from Mr. Bobcat Power. Is that a part of the legitimate lore, or is that kind of troll lore?
This is a legitimate part of SCP canon because PAMWAC is one of numerous groups of interest, specifically from the Japanese branch of the SCP Wiki. And so over on the international hubs, you can see the international branches for so many different languages. And on the Japanese branch, you have PAMWAC. And PAMWAC is, in fact, the research projects for, what was it? Research Projects Agency for the Marriage with Anime Characters. And essentially, they are online anonymous trolls, similar to what we on the English Wiki would consider the Gamers Against Weed. I'm sure they're very different in method and ideology, but especially because they seem to be focused on otaku culture. But they've got a whole bunch of they're doing anomalous things online with waifus. That is their goal. And it is 100% canon, which means some people get very, very serious about what SCP lore should be. And you can't do that, guys, because PAMWAC exists. Because Gamers Against Weed exists. This is a silly, silly place. Always has been.
So in the foundation itself, is that like kind of like a hobby? Is that like what SCP scientists do on their side when they're not like containing anomalies? They're kind of like, all right, man, we got to get Boma in real life. We got a few SCPs in here. What can we do?
So the trick is that it's not Foundation staff. Because if they were Foundation staff and they were caught, they would be tried for treason. What we're looking at is an entirely different group of interest, like the Global Occult Coalition. The Global Occult Coalition is a separate group. PAMWAC is a separate group.
Oh,
and according to the Japanese wiki, they have 9 different pages on the Japanese wiki. And to be canonized, at least on the English branch, you need to have 5 stories by 3 different authors. So even if you're like one guy super passionate about writing, you can't make your thing canon unless you can get other people to jump on the bandwagon with you. But once you do, then it can be a canon group of interest. And so, I mean, the American branch has something like 37 or 47 groups of interest. And then all of the other language branches use ours, but also have their own offshoots.
So I gotta say, if Goku is if GOC and SCP Foundation are Goku and Vegeta, is Pamwhack like Yamcha?
Hamwhack is Yajirobe. Let's get it right.
All right, so here we have a little bit more of a little bit more straight-laced lore question. Soloer asks, a question that has always lingered in my mind is why doesn't the Foundation just drop some red ice SCP-009 in the ocean? Would that be pretty detrimental to humanity after all?
Gotta go in the database to red ice. Contain. No circumstances exposed to temperatures of excess of 0. So obviously we don't put it in the ocean because it's not frozen. So obviously we would never do that. It's in the testing protocols. Light, liters of substance, distilled water, bright red. I forget what it does. It does something bad. And so there's a reason we don't do it. Read the document. It's right there.
So there you go. Putting it in the water is bad and would not lead to good things. So definitely.
And we don't let 447 come in contact with dead bodies. We all know the rules.
TFT Elite Pilot and Admiral asks, question for anyone, would UIU troops show mental degradation over time at Area 12, i.e. hallucinations, dizziness, vision tissues, cognitive changes, and maybe even self-harm?
There will be indications of self-harm because of just the very nature of like the gravity of what's happening here. It's important to convey that while the Foundation's in the events of the 5,000 story, while the Foundation's mission has changed, it doesn't mean that everyone within these facilities necessarily agreed with it. In terms of hallucinogenic things, we've played with the idea of having some things cause hallucinations. It's very tricky to pull off, especially with networking and multiplayer. It creates issues, but we have some ideas we're still trying to play with. Originally, 173B was meant to cause you to imagine things, and it would give you like images and hallucinations to impair you, which, given the way he works, there's obvious reasons why that would have been interesting and beneficial.
So well, technically there already is kind of like some psychological eternal darkness effects with like the screen anomaly, because if you look at it too long,
Yeah,
doesn't
true.
that technically kind of like force you to kill yourself or self-harm?
Not self-harm. It sort of overloads your brain. I think the in studio justification we have is that the entity is in your mind, and it's in part of you, and it's sort of like a concentrated amount in a way, if you want to think about it that way. And this anomaly that's in these screens really doesn't like the entity, and so whenever it tries to take you over or control you like it would a normal person, it actually detects that, and it kind of freaks out, and think of it like sending too much voltage to a circuit, and your head just kind of pops. That's kind of the effect.
I see. Spaceman 360 asks, Dr. Sherman, in a similar question to Bobcat Power, what are your thoughts on the GUI known as ATF Accelerate the Future?
Yet again, another group that I do not have in my standard research thing. The whole trick with the SCP Wiki is there's over 9,000 SCPs now, and there's at least another 5,000 to 7,000 tales. There's something like 17,000 total stories on the wiki. And so even me, who makes my whole thing reading SCP stories online and talking about them and studying them, there's only so much we can go after. Now, Accelerate the Future, at least I've heard the name, but yeah, I don't even remember. They're not on the group of interest list. And so I have very little intel on them.
Apparently, Spaceman says they're anomalous furries. I guess they're kind of like another branch similar to the animal wife coalition.
Oh, wait a minute. I think I do know them then. SCP 00, what's this? is SCP-3312. I know them. 3312 is Accelerate the Future, right? Yeah, they're ATF. At least they're the first article I know by them. That is an anomalous furry. Well, it's a big group of online things, but one of them is an anomalous furry named something or other. And their whole Ollie Fox. And his whole deal was that he was making advertisements online that turn you into a furry, which then you would buy fursuits from him, I think. But the problem was you didn't turn into a good furry, like a normal human furry. It broke your brain a little bit, so you became super obsessed, and then animal obsessed, and then you started acting like a animal and freaking out. And the trick was that to battle this, if you were involved in the furry community before being exposed, you were immune. You were vaccinated. And so we had to, as a foundation, battle this by having a new MTF, the Mobile Task Furries, with tactical fursuits. And they went into battle and they stopped this anomaly. This is SCP-3312. Once again, I'm not kidding. It's canon. And it's at a ranking of +534. It is Series 4, so not even that new. And it is the whole thing. It's a wide world of anomalies out there.
There's something for everyone. Ariox Needle says, you have created a fantastic foundation for a game, dark, gritty, and realistic, and thematically coherent. Do not squander this. There's with countless silly jokes, comments, games out there you can play. Yeah, he was basically saying if you guys start involving nonsense like cartoons, furries, or other unrealistic or silly, inconsistent elements, that's the moment me and my mates stop supporting the game. Well, Atrioc, I will say, as much as we love discussing all the goofier aspects of the SCP canon, none of those things are probably going to be in 5K. 5K is going to remain relatively straight-laced and horror-focused. Because that is like an interesting, like Dr. Sherman, would you like to because originally the SCP had its like roots as horror creepypasta, right?
So SCP Foundation as a whole started as one creepypasta on 4chan. And then when other people started aping its style because they were inspired by it, they made a bunch on 4chan, then they moved it to the offsite. I think it was the Edit This Wiki. And then they ended up moving it to Wikidot after that. And even in the first 1,000 SCPs, there were people have this memory of it being super spooky all the time, super grimdark, and they see the writing as better than it was. There's obviously some gems in the old series, and even the gems can be a little poorly written creepypasta style. There was still a lot of jokes back in the day. There was a lot of wokes back in the day, and I get a little triggered by comments like this because I have to fight this battle as a content creator all the time to remember that we can't take this too serious. There is the horror aspect, but there's also the other side that's always been there. And you can enjoy the horror and not the other aspect. You can enjoy the goofy stuff and not the horror. It's one doesn't mess with the other. And sometimes they do come together and make a better whole, like a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. But the big thing about SCP is there's so much that you can take what you like and ignore the rest, as long as you're not yucking someone else's yum. Because that is just not good behavior in life, let alone in a creative community where the goal is to yes and help people to grow more and more stuff.
That is an important philosophy that, like, I think, as Trey will attest to, 5K does have a very specific vision, but ultimately SCP is meant to be enjoyed however you like. That's the beauty of Creative Commons. That's the beauty of the infinite sandbox of human imagination. And, you can enjoy it as a straight-laced thing, and once it gets on the Steam Workshop, if you want to make it silly and ridiculous, then you will have that opportunity eventually at some point in the future, and you can enjoy it however you like.
And yeah, the two other things I'll say on it real quick, I don't want to harp on this kind of thing, just to add on to what Ariaxanil is adding. Similar to Stalker series, they're interested in it being more realistic and serious. It kind of gets into the vibe of SCP that Evan Royalties Works have. Dollhouse, what was it? I forget the name of his short films. It's Dollhouse, something
Overlord.
else.
The Overlord was
Overlord, thank you. I kept going to Overseer and it broke my brain. Yeah, Overlord. And to me, I find those kind of boring. I know that they're kind of cool and I can respect the filmmaking, but it doesn't speak to me in my comedy place the same way that most of the other wiki does. So I hope that someone who appreciates that will not hate me for what I like the same way I don't hate you for what you like. And the last thing of it is that you get a lot of people out in public complaining that SCP is woke nowadays. Now, earlier in the stream, I told you about how there have always been woke because it came from authors and creators and artists who are usually leaning that way. We had trans characters from the very beginning of the GOC. And even in the army today, you got people who walk around with patches on their arm showing that they are LGBTQ and still fighting well for our country. And so it's people see LGBTQ and woke as political because something politics America today. But SCP was always been in there and LGBTQ has always been in life. It doesn't have to be political if you don't make a big deal of it. People can be proud of what they are and still fight and support our troops because our troops are that too. You know what I mean?
Very diplomatic answer. Now, bringing things back more to the focus of the game, NEJJJ asks, will Outpost Axiom get an overhaul? Will we get a mission when we're fighting against SCPs in a city? And will we film sequences in the game that are the start of Area 12 mission when advancing? Or will we get film sequences in the game and have a start of the Area 12 mission when advancing? I do know Outpost Axiom is eventually going to get a big overhaul, but I don't want to say anything that wouldn't have Trey's approval. But what would you say Outpost Axiom is in the general 5K campaign?
So, Outpost Axiom originally started as an experiment to do a different game mode, and then it turned into a map that was meant to be simple, and then it turned into a really complicated map, and then it became a fun place to just kind of do PvP in. Now we've actually decided that we're going to, in the interest of maintaining scope and also making sure that we can get the game done in a reasonable amount of time, but sort of use what we have without throwing anything away. The game mode that we experimented with originally for that map is I just saw Cal and stuff commented about it not being fun to do PvP in. Well, that sounds like a skill issue, Cal. I'm sorry. The the thing we decided to do with the Outpost Axiom map was rework it so that it would serve as eventually being the surface area of Area 12, and sort of the facade that they put up to hide the actual entrance to it. And what was the other thing was asking about prior to the events of the mission. Yes, we're going to do something to talk about that. The room you wake up in is technically the beginning of the mission, but it's not the beginning of the entire game. And so there will be a prologue mission, which thankfully will be compartmentalized on its own, so that every time you play the game for the campaign, you don't have to do the tutorial section, and we don't have to put tutorial stuff in the main like meat of the game where it currently we have to put it in there sometimes. Those were the two questions. There was a third one. What was the third one?
The third one was, let me again. Oh, will we get a film sequence in the game that at the start of the Area 12 mission with advancing? I guess he's asking, will there be like a cutscene kind of transitioning the, showing the entrance into Area 12?
Yeah, a little bit. So we want to be really careful about cutscenes because we don't want to interrupt the action and take away from the experience. But we will have some cutscenes, but we're going to try to keep them to the beginning and ends of sections so that it doesn't like really become something annoying. And also, you'll be able to skip it. But yes, you will get things like that.
So there you go. There are plans coming for the outpost Axiom. But in the meantime, you can enjoy the starting mission, and you can also use it as a multiplayer map now. Although Gooms asks, Sherman's pen is melee weapon when?
Soon, actually. It's funny because you think I'm joking.
Hey, I'm ready to choose violence.
I'm literally not joking.
Well, there is like a knife, right? How difficult would it be to get that as a animation?
Um, I don't know about it being difficult to get the animation because the pin is already animated. I'm not joking.
I cannot wait to see this update.
I look forward to potentially seeing the pen hotfix as well.
Yeah, just put a pin in it though.
So I guess, Sherman, is there any particular piece of the lore in the GOC that you really enjoy having done like a deep dive into it?
So, running through the GOC stories, one thing is they're very big due to the occult wars and all of that. There's a whole lot of that end of World War II business, but the other side of it that we didn't see. And so once they were formed, because during the Seventh Occult War, i.e. World War II, they were known as something like the Allied Occult something. Trying to remember. Allied Occult Initiative, thank you, Clef, again. And after that, and that was when they were fighting the Nazis, the Obscura Corps. And then they formed afterwards, and one of their big storylines following all that, the Clef incident, is called the Cornwall Goddess Incident. And essentially, this is back when Clef was working for the GOC. And one of the things that the GOC adjudicates, and this is all Clef talking, by the way. One of the things the GOC adjudicates is the treaty between Britain and Avalon, i.e. King Arthur, and the Lady of the Lake and the Fey Folk. And when it comes down to the situation, Clef in his childhood became involved with one of the representatives of the Fae. And later on, he was involved with an attempt by that same Fae to rewrite reality so that humanity never proceeded into the Industrial Age. Or, as it's put in the story, they wanted to keep humanity in the Garden of Eden. And so, this is where Clef had to turn his back on his former lover and save his daughter and bring her to the Foundation. Also, just a neat thing about that Obscura Corps stuff is, I didn't know this until Clef told me, during the Seventh Occult War, part of what happened is that is where God died. Legit. And it is the idea from the original lore that they were writing together was that Nietzsche's statement, God is dead, was literally God's obituary. And that everything that happened with the Holocaust and all is because God's gone and no one's helping.
So, wait, that's a pretty big lore bomb to drop. Who killed him?
Right. He didn't tell me who killed God.
You can't just leave that out. Like, I don't know, you ever read...
I guess you'll just have to read the story.
Do you ever read His Dark Materials by any chance when you were growing up?
I didn't, but I got led to it by a friend of mine, and so now I've read the book, seen the show, and everything now.
So I'm sure you're familiar where there's like a huge biblical angel war in the end, and they wind up killing God in like the third book. So I guess you got to go read the article to find out how God died in the SCP universe and how potentially the GOC or is the Red King responsible? Did he do it?
Whole lot going on in that Seventh Occult War, and we don't know a lot of it because most of it is just alluded to.
God dang it! Now I want books. Like, aren't there like 5 bajillion books about the the Horus heresy for 40K? Is there anything for the 7 Occult Wars?
First of all, Warhammer 40K was listed by Clef as inspiration for the GOC. So there's some little crossover there. And secondly, I can point you guys, if you really want to dig deep on the Occult Wars, in my research, I found a Reddit post on our SCP. It's called A Brief Primer on the Occult Wars by user blank owl, blank with 3 A's. So blank underscore owl. And he gives you a little breakdown of the Occult Wars, but also there's a whole bunch of different recommended reading regarding to each one. So SCPs and tales relating to the different Occult Wars where they can be useful. So you can get your homework did real good there.
All right, so there is lore. Spaceman 360 asks, Bishop, will there be a way to weaponize fire extinguishers in the foreseeable future? They create a cloud of smoke when you shoot them for now, but could they maybe explode?
I actually need to look into it because I know if you took like coffee creamer, for example, and threw it into the air, if it's aerated enough but still dense, it'll technically ignite, much the way that sawdust collecting in a wood mill would. It can just explode, right? I don't know if fire extinguishers will do that, given the fact that it's a chemical compound meant to put fire out. Part of me wonders if Sherman is Googling this right now because he looked like he was looking.
No. I'm catching up on what'll be the
things-
next question along the way.
Gotcha. We do have things that are using similar mechanics to that fire extinguisher that we do want to be able to explode. Fire extinguisher, though, no plans currently. But now I'm going to look into it because I'm curious.
Oh, so there might be who knows? There could be exploding ways, fire extinguishers in your future. And Callan stuff asks, are there any plans for tools in the game?
Plans for tools in the game?
Mm-hmm. I assume he means like non-combat tools. Not quite like this won't be in the game probably, but like a grapple gun, something like that.
Oh, no, I don't think we'll have like a grapple gun or anything like that. It's tough because there's lots of cool things like that, but like, when does it change the genre of the game completely? No, I mean, like the crowbar, for example, like you could use that to pry open doors and crates and stuff. So technically, it's a weapon and a tool. We'll have more things kind of like that.
So there is more like utility and things that do things besides shoot stuff. And everyone always loves more varied gameplay.
Oh, they mean that something in the tools tab in the loadout area. Yeah. There will be something there for that. I wanted to say what it was just then, and I stopped myself because I realized we're still working on a new feature for it, and I don't want to commit or obligate Barney to it. He'd probably be upset if I did. So we do have a plan for it. Yes, it's there for a reason, but we'll get to it later.
All right, so there is stuff coming. Spaceman 360 asks Dr. Sherman, does the Black Moon howl?
No, not without blood. Only at the blind. Not while the stars shine. Only when waning. Yes.
Oh God, I feel like a little kid hearing the Green Lantern's oath from Ryan Reynolds back when people thought that movie was going to be good.
Oh, which movie was that?
The Green Lantern movie.
Oh yeah, that was awful. Yeah.
Well, there was one moment where people were kind of excited for it, and then whatchamacallit, some kid at Comic-Con asked, Ryan, Reynolds, can you please do the Green Lantern's oath? And he was able to do it from memory, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's the one!" But sadly, he wasn't. But the Blood Moon howl gave me those kind of tingles.
There are a lot of different versions of that. That one is specifically from Tanhoney's proposal for those who want to look that up. Tanhoney's proposal 2.
Zahir asks, will we get a name or backstory for the UIU agent we play as?
Can you repeat the question?
Will we get a backstory for the UIU agent we play as?
Mm, not likely, because the idea is that you're a group of people that they rounded up in the middle of the night to sort of accumulate the massive bodies they needed to initiate this raid on Area 12 as a spur of the moment thing. And you could have one player or four players doing the main story campaign, so not likely.
Okay, so that makes sense though. It kind of like fits in, like, the nameless guy who gets to like let you be the audience insert to kind of like feel more immersed versus like, this is Tech Jensen and he had a really traumatic backstory which made him join the UIU. And
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tied to a question we had earlier, like how we do the narrative, right? And that's why we actually ended up having the reportable kind of feature. Was Crow became our sort of our emotional tether, the character that would personify the events that are unfolding around us, because we were worried that if we tried to make that be voice lines that were coming from you as a character, depending on who's playing and like how many people are playing, and not knowing if they're going to be like chatting with their friends while they're playing the game, it was easier and cleaner to make that be a detached character that was with you at all times through your radio, right?
mm, um and that kind of like leads to a little bit more of diegetic immersion, that classic sort of Half-Life storytelling where not everything is told via cutscene.
Yeah, and it also means that we can get you really attached to somebody, and then whenever you lose radio signal, you're vulnerable and alone.
That does a great way to kind of build tension and have it just sort of immerse the player. So out of curiosity, Dr. Sherman, out of all of the what thing in the update of 0.16 have you been most excited for that you've seen from a fray? Is it 610? Is it the GOC lore?
For
Ooh.
me, I'm very interested in seeing how the timelines swap, because this is where you're really getting into the GOC is dealing in Antarctica with 610. That is a derivation from the current lore. Obviously, there is no canon, that's completely fine. But I can tell, especially in my talks with Bowman previously, that I've seen a little bit of the timeline behind the scenes. No spoilers, but there's some crazy stuff going down, and this seems like it's gonna tip things into the direction of the ball's rolling now.
That is the most exciting part. Is like is when the full narrative is revealed. But unfortunately, Sherman has been bound. We don't want to force him to become declassed unless he reveals something too too good. But I guess I know that there's like a heavy narrative component. Would you say that the narrative elements in the 610 update or the 016 are comparable to the overhaul we recently had in 015 with the first part of chapter 1 of Area 12?
What do you
Trey?
mean? Like which part of it?
The new additions to Antarctica, are they kind of like as fleshed out as kind of like the opening segment with the parking lot with kind of like the TOC narrative?
Oh, I see. Um, I would say that the Antarctica mission has a much more fleshed out and polished version implementation of narrative and voice lines from start to end of a mission than anything else in Area 12. We took this opportunity because there wasn't with Area 12 it's hard because we have to fix and like rearrange a lot of stuff, and like moving a room can affect everything else in the whole facility. But with Antarctica it's a whole new map, and so it was easier to construct and create a full and thorough experience there versus Area 12, which is taking a little bit longer. But yeah, that's what I think the comparison would be. Antarctica is a lot more meat to it already, but it's a good example of like the quality you can expect from the rest of the campaign.
Very exciting. Sharpshooter 43 asks, do you have any plans to make it to where we don't have to push to talk, because it's a little annoying to have to hold a button? Thoughts on that design and philosophy?
Holding the button for the voice chat.
Yeah, I think he means like holding the button for the TOC commands, or no, or maybe it's just squad talking.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if they're talking about using push to talk. Okay, yeah. I hate push to talk. I want us to change it so that you can just toggle it and then just have it on, honestly. I think we want to. It's one of those things that we were like, we recognize this and we want to do it, but there's a million other things over here that like we want the gameplay to really be good. So we were like, well, let's put this lower on our podium, like our totem pole of things that are important, and we're gonna get to it, but it hasn't been the biggest priority at the moment.
So that is on the addition for hot fixes. TFC Elite Pilot and Admiral asks, question, will there be a tactical operations center for the GOC like Crow, or like an AI announcer at all? If not, will we have some sort of verbal communication at all in the future, or even in this update, or just pure silence? So is there like a commanding officer that the GOC crew will interact with?
Yeah, so I think every faction should have some kind of guy in the chair or voice in their ear that's talking to them over a radio, whether they're Foundation or their Fault Line. Do people know about Fault Line yet? Whoops, spoiler. Anyway, the yeah, so GOC do have their own operative that they're talking to. It's not Crow.
All right, so they do have their own CO or commanding officer. I guess you'll just have to wait till Wednesday to learn more about them. It is coming very soon. Thankfully, you don't have to wait too long.
Oh, cool! I did not spoil Fault Line. We did release that article. I wasn't sure, but I'm glad I'm glad you guys are confirming in the chat. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Bishop, is there anything you can say about the upcoming feature, the Lavos?
I am surprised that Lavos is being typed out in the chat. Where did that get put out? That wasn't supposed to be out yet.
That's a good question. Maybe some classified information has been, but you'll just have to wait and see about the.
Someone's getting demoted to D class.
Oh, it says it in the update notes. It doesn't say Lavos on that blueprint. I know, I drew it.
It says it on the top in the text.
Oh no, the Lavos. Oh, that's right. The dev blog. That's what it was. I forgot that came out. Was it yesterday?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wednesday. That's when that.
You guys are wanting to know more about the Lavos. Okay, someone in the chat, be a bit more specific. What do you want to know about the Lavos? Because I can't just give you all the information, because that's too easy. Like, give me a specific question about the Lavos.
Answer me these riddles 3.
Can we use it? Can we use it? Yes, you can. Kinda. Does boom go big? If no one's around to see the boom, does it still boom?
I think it's the same riddle as the tree in the forest. AD asks, my apologies if this has been asked already, but what are the plans for PvP game modes? Will it always be a team deathmatch, or are we getting more unique game modes and maps?
You are getting more unique game modes and maps. And how do I confirm this without saying what it is? Because I would like you to like be excited and me not just go yes or maybe, but not actually really elaborate. It's tough. There's a lot of cool stuff I want to show you and tell you, but I also want you guys to still be surprised when we're ready and the time comes. Someone also earlier on the subject of additional maps asked if we'd ever be fighting in a city. It would be a real shame if we didn't. I know that someone on the team has already been also asking similar questions and maybe has been experimenting with that question. So maybe.
Ah, you'll have to wait and see. There could be some interesting urban outfits coming. Little Queecha asks, will there be balancing differences based on squad size in terms of enemy amounts, gear, and ammo? That is kind of an interesting perspective. Is it kind of like Borderlands where it auto scales depending on your teammates, where it makes it harder? Is there a system like that? And if not, will we see something like that in the future?
There is something like that, and it's not perfect yet because as we're in early access, balancing is something we're going to continually have to tweak because for example, we add a new monster to Antarctica, we work on the AI and improve it a little bit. The AI is shared with other systems for other creatures and other enemies, and then it affects how their behavior works, and sometimes it just breaks it all together. We're not even working on Area 12, we're working on Antarctica, and we got to go over and fix a bunch of bugs in Antarctica. So whenever we do this, we set up like the scaling and the balancing, we end up tweaking things, but it affects everything across the board. So yes, we have the scaling thing. It will scale depending on your squad size, but I wouldn't expect it to be perfect. When we get closer to the game being more complete, it'll be easier to sort of fine tune those things finally and like get them all to a place where they're balanced evenly.
So that'll probably be like something you'll see later on. Dare asks, we got guards and D-class AI. Will we get scientists trying to kill you like other GOIs?
Yes.
So there will be other AIs. You'll just have to wait and see what they are. Will there be more LMG options? Love the M249, but it's practically non-existent. No hate, just asking.
I don't know about more LMG options, but you will probably end up seeing variants of some guns you're not expecting to see or have no chance of even understanding could exist, which is probably a heck of a hint, but I'm not going to say anything else.
And Sherman, here's something I'm kind of curious. Has Afraid managed to like make an impact in the GOC lore? Because I know people loved when we had the 0.14 update announcing the GOC was in the game. We had that cool scene where like they're in the snow and then they turn in. They're saying, "Good to work with you, UIU. We'll watch the light while we're in the dark." And I even me, I kind of, it reminded me of like being a little kid in Saturday Morning when like G.I. Joe teamed up with Cobra and like the one, 3-part crossover special. Has any of Afraid's work kind of trickled down to the wiki?
Well, I do know for a fact that specifically there have been several SCP articles written basically in collaboration with a small group of SCP authors that are currently on the wiki. This was a project that Bowman was interacting with some authors on, and I can't remember the list off the top of my head, but at the bottom they say in collaboration with Afreco, and they are part of a project to make sure that Afre is giving back to the community as much as it's taking, and it's interacting with the lore in a way that is additive for all parties. And so, just on its own, that is a concrete yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's not even specific to Bowman or anything. We had SCP writers that were friends with us and contributed to the project themselves directly for quite a long time, even before I was here, which was sometime even before Bowman was here. So it's always been something that was like heavily hand in hand involved with the SCP wiki and the community there. So
yeah, I one of our like phrase proudest contributions is the door squid, and that's definitely something I love seeing in like creator thumbnails where like people do let's play videos, and you just have like a big image of the door squid popping out and eating someone. I'm like, oh, look at the door squid. Everyone's favorite little mollusk is out there populating the world.
What adorable little monstrosity we've made.
Well, just out of curiosity, is like an old fan of D&D and other classic role playing, do you like the Door Squid as like a modern contemporary take on the classic Mimic?
Knock 3 times, they'll send you, or else you die.
TFT Elite asks, question for Dr. Sherman. What was your reaction opinion when you first saw the 5K story, the one with Pietro Wilson? Like the idea of finding an entity in the unconscious mind and such.
I remember that contest. I was going through it because I was a part of, I think we got second place, our team did, but it's SCP-5999 was the team I worked on in the competition. But Tanhoney, I don't remember if we got second or third, but Tanhoney ran away with that contest. And as I'm reading his entry, it was just like, oh, yeah, I can see why. It is... sometimes when articles are long like that, I'll like read them in chunks throughout a workday or something, but I was just gripped. It was an adventure ride the whole way through. And as was also asked, the entity in the unconscious mind is such an interesting concept that you turn that around and it's like all of this is happening because humanity is broken because this thing has infected us. And so the attempt is to like change that, but you got to kill us all or most of us. And the cured are this like freakish, emotionless thing like the guy in Ganir. That there's so much good mystery to that on top, underneath a rip-roaring minecart ride. And so, that was a hell of a story. I'm not shocked it got a game because, geez Louise, Tanhoney knocked it out of the park.
Well, I've heard people describe it as like the Marvel Avengers Infinity War of the SCP universe. It was like kind of like a comic crossover event with like, super blockbuster. Everyone's here, all the favorites, kind of like, but it was also combined with like one of those Elseworld stories where everything goes wrong. So you kind of had those two factors of success.
In the early wiki, it was very common to cross-link articles. And so all over Series 1, you'll see we cross-tested with this other one, and we put these two together to see what would happen. And it eventually, cross-linking got overused to a point where it became less about linking stories together and just trying to use the popularity of another story to make up for the fact that your story's kind of crap. And so cross-linking fell out of fashion for a while. And then eventually the community realized, well, it makes the wiki less fun to like, when we used to jump to article, there's a way to do it right. And so people started reintegrating cross-linking slowly. And then Tanhoney is just like, here's all of it at once. Top tier, throw everything in a pit and see how it interacts.
Yeah, I can imagine that like a lot of people were like, just threw up their hands like, yep, this deserves the designation of 5K.
Yeah. I don't know if you've, I assume you've probably had a chance to talk to him before yourself, Sherman. I got the pleasure of doing so once or twice. And for the people that are watching, there was this cool moment I got to have with him where I said, well, you did sign the NDA, right? And he said, yeah. And I was like, well, let me show you something. Cause I want to, like, we haven't told anybody about this. We haven't showed it off at all. It was a couple of things. And one specific thing that I said, hey, this is a big deal for me. And I want to see what your opinion is of it, given that you wrote this stuff and what you think. And then, so I showed him some artwork about something. And I said, is this what, do you feel like this is true to what you envisioned? And he seemed very, very pleased and said as much as this is exactly the kind of thing I think it should be. And it was as close to what he imagined as it could possibly have been, without having known what he really wanted it to be. And I'm really excited for everyone to find out what that thing is without without saying it now. But I'm very confident in it, and it was a good moment. It was a really cool moment.
You're Ant-Man sitting on the bench, and Tanhoney Hulk comes by and hands you a taco of approval. You did it.
Yeah, he's a very nice person. Very, very nice.
Um, uh, Andrew Gunnavan asks, by the way, is there SCPs capable of wall running, or at least ones that gives user an ability to wall running? Not as strong as Alex Mercer from prototype games. So it seems like people want an SCP that lets you do some Titan Tall wall running. Is that a possibility, or would that break SCP-5K's more grounded appeal?
It's not about breaking the grounded appeal for me because it's science fiction, and I love the sort of weirdness that comes from SCP. In fact, often if we ever like release our notes from like meetings or agendas or anything when we talk about stuff, I often will say, remember, make it weird. Like it has to be weird. Find ways that are interesting to make something weirder than whatever solution we default to in our brains. Um, the problem with wall running though is like the systems. This gets into the technical stuff, like being able to make things run on walls. It gets very complicated. Um, Even in games like Skyrim, just their ladders. We just now got ladders in. Skyrim, to solve their ladder issue, was they just had the stairs turned vertically and so steep just enough that you could still use them like stairs, but it felt like you were using a ladder. That was their solution. So
I
running
never
on
heard that.
walls is a much more complicated thing for us. I think in Minecraft, the way that spiders climb up the walls is they have invisible ladders that only the spiders can use. And that's how they get up the walls.
Oh my lord.
So yeah, so I don't think we're gonna have wall running anytime soon, but we're always trying to find weird and interesting things to add to the game.
Hmm.
Lore-wise, I know there are plenty of anomalies that can climb on walls, but I can't find anything at a cursory glance that would allow you to run on walls. That being said, anomalous tech is made up all the time for story purposes, so it's not impossible someone came up with it.
Oh, who knows? Maybe in DLC, the wall running is not an impossibility. Um, but that you'll just have to wait and see, and stay tuned on all of Afray's socials. Callan Stuff asks, is Labos related to the anti-mimetic bombs from the tin ad?
There is no anti-memetics division.
Oh, I saw you did like a watch through. Did you? We did a screening. The filmmaker was really nice. He hosted a movie night that we did for it. Did you enjoy that as much as I did?
Oh, that guy was fabulous. Andre and I started talking right before it was released. I help him publicize on the Site 42 channel. It's a great series.
Yeah, you did a fantastic job putting that together. So I always thought that was kind of like top notch effort. So anyone here, go check out the There Is No Anti-Mimetics Division film. It was a very impressive piece of work. Trey, would you say anything you can talk about anti-mimetic bombs and Tinad, or is that too spoilery?
Pass.
All right, so you'll just have to wait and see. You'll have to wait and see. So we are closing in on 2 hours. We've been going very well. But how you feeling, Trey? How you feeling, Sherman? Energy going up, or is it a school night? And should we start prepping to wrap things up?
Well, I won't speak for Sherman, but for myself, I should probably get going because there's a gameplay trailer that needs to be put together. So
The longer we stay here, the longer that trailer takes.
Yeah, that is a good point. All right, so we shouldn't keep poor Trey here, but all right, so how about this? This is our compromise. We will do a 15-minute countdown, blitz mode before we wrap things up. Sherman, you've been really generous for your time. For all of you SCP lore nerds, this is the guy to ask your most obscure questions. I know you come here during the time when we have wonderful people like Anders there who, can do wonderful gun animations but may not know SCP lore. This is the guy you want to have to ask the most obscure questions. He's the best chance of giving you an informed answer. Do not let this opportunity go into the night. Give him some questions. Let's have a blowout. Let's just get as many weird and wonderful things asked as possible. DCR asks, question for all three, smash or pass 610?
Well, Dr. Sherman is asexual, so pass, and no fraternizing with the anomalies. But regular Sherman out of character might say that if it's got the flesh, it probably got some holes in there somewhere. I'm just saying.
Well, I guess you
No.
just have to you have to turn it from the flesh that hates to the flesh that loves, and maybe just loving would help save humanity. Love truly
You
is
mean the flesh that mates?
the flesh that mates. I'm gonna give a pass, but I'm sure that the flesh that mates would probably be, a more pleasant thing. TFT asks, question for Dr. Sherman: are you gonna dev with a fray? Make sure they don't mess up.
So it hasn't been stated on this stream, but I am currently working behind the scenes with Afray as a consultant. And so I am doing work behind the scenes. I'm working with Bowman on a lot of the lore stuff, looking at their timelines and all that. I don't have final say in any means. I'm just here to say, hey, it goes that way a little bit, maybe. Maybe this is the SCP you can plug in here to make this transition you're trying to do make more sense. I know I've already thrown some ideas out there that may or may not be being implemented. So I'm here to help. I'm here to help.
Yeah,
Who
it's really
knew?
helpful if someone doesn't have enough knowledge of the wiki to have someone that can tell you. So it's been really beneficial in that way.
It definitely saves time versus spending hours upon hours combing through hundreds of thousands of pages. Talent Stuff asks, what are your thoughts on SCP-6959? I know its addition to the game would please Scissorhet. Unsure how the licensing for that would work, though.
Oh,
All right, this is news to me. Oh, it's a Toho plushie. I am not familiar with this anomaly. That's part of the journey of SCP is we're Creative Commons, but then media properties like Garfield and Sesame Street make small little entries that probably push the line of what Creative Commons should allow. So I can't answer for my preferences on it because I don't know anything about it outside of what I'm seeing at the database right now. Meanwhile, it probably makes the game a little squirmy to involve something like that.
I hope it's not dangerous because I just realized that Suzette sent me one of those and it's sitting on a shelf now in my house. I hope it's not going to kill me.
Be careful, man.
Zahir asks, will we have different uniforms for the UIU, like winter and etc., other than the blue one? Will they be able to have different outfits?
I'm sorry, can the UIU afford more than one outfit?
Oh my!
Those guys have zero budget.
The UIU slander.
Hey. Listen. You can't just always ride the bandwagon and go with the team that has more money. Sometimes you got to go with the underdog. And you know what? They may be less funded than some of the other factions, but they have heart.
Yeah, and you know what happens to your hearts when you engage with most anomalies? They leave your chest unless you are prepared with the proper materials.
Well, I think that's actually funny you mentioned that. I think that's probably the thing that's most exciting and why we decided to use the UIU. Like if anyone here is new and they don't know enough just from surmising things or like just playing the game, you get sort of trapped in Area 12 by a lockdown. You're not meant to go in there. You have no idea that what is happening is this omnicide and this big huge thing. You're not expecting this. You're really just going in to like knock on the door and think that you're dealing with some people that are doing things they're not supposed to. And then you get trapped in there and you're not trained for this, nor do you have the equipment for it, which is why you have just normal guns and you're going up against these monsters. So you're kind of just like, Crow's talking on the radio and she goes, you're going to have to do the best you can. And like throughout the mission, she's like, she's trying to like keep you calm and like check on you. Like, are you okay? Are you good? Because she knows you could just snap and lose your sanity at any point in time. And she can't afford that because you're the only one in there that can do the job because no one else is going to be able to get in there. So I think the UIU, especially after this mission, deserves a little bit of credit.
Well, tell me this at least, Sherman. This has got to be the best the UIU has ever looked in the history of the wiki. Like, I feel like Frey has like done the utmost to kind of like put them in the coolest, best light that they've ever been in.
I would certainly say that 50 to 60% of UIU stories on the wiki are about them being low rent screw ups who the Foundation or other GOIs have to clean up over. Most of the ones where they are in a better position are usually lower level stories where they're not dealing with world ending threats, and especially when they're dealing with 3 Portlands, because they are the stewards of 3 Portlands, as voted on by that anomalous community. So we are not allowed to bother them because the UIU is in charge of that area.
So does that mean that like the UIUs, like, you know, looking after Portlandia and Fred Armisen and the other actress, are they kind of like controlling that?
Portlandia reference in this my 2025. For those who are unfamiliar, 3 Portlands is a anomalous city of approximately 80,000 people that is in the otherworldly space between it's Portland, Oregon, Portland. What are the other Portlands? I always forget. Portland, Oregon, Isle of Portland in the UK, and Portland, Maine. Somewhere in between those 3 Portlands is a secret 3 Portlands. And that's where all the anomalous people hang out and just city live.
But do they get brunch that is ethically sourced? I did not know that.
They do.
For me, Portland will always be like characterized by Portlandia. Andrei Gunovov asks, where was he? All right, yes. Also, are there SCPs that unleash something like a tendril barrage devastator attack from the prototype game that can lead to Michael Bay explosions when unleashed? I think there's something that might have maybe a little tentacles, but I don't know if it has something comparable to. Have either of you played the prototype games?
Yeah.
I'm going to say, first of all, are you just a huge Prototype fan? Or did you watch the Jacob Geller video essay about Prototype that released this afternoon on Nebula? Because that's what I did with my morning. And now I'm wondering if this is a coincidence.
Was it good? Usually the Nebula video essays are always like a little bit step above what you get on YouTube.
Yeah, Jacob Geller, king of video essayists on video game subjects. It's about how human bodies are just seen as meat that can be like gibbed in video games, and how different games utilize human forms not as people but of piles of meat. And Prototype was a big one about that.
That's like how we handle the D class.
That's how we handle the D class, exactly.
Oh God! If only Trey was equipped. Have you ever seen the D class cosplay that Trey wears?
I think Sherman did see it because we did a video together with.
Oh yeah! Why am I so dumb? You sent me the video. I posted the video. Ah!
Well, I was disguised, so I mean, you know, it's easy to forget.
Could have been anyone in there.
It's those Nestics. They got you. Or no, it'd be the Amnestics actually. But yeah, you forgot that I was even not just a human, but also me once I put on that hood. Convenient.
I still love
just a
that
resource
costume.
to be managed.
That costume is always like fantastic. Oni Mask Pro asks, will we see the GOC's orange suits, big fine powered armor at some point, or is that going to be too gameplay breaking? GOC has orange suits. Care to educate me, Dr. Sherman?
Actually, the orange suit is news to me. I'm going to go look in the database real quick while Trey takes this as the start.
So, poor Kyle Fitzpatrick, our wonderful art director, has created on many occasions some beautiful concept art for different kinds of characters and factions, all with fantastic justified reasons that include things like exo suits or power armor type things. And if you're talking about exosuit type stuff, like what you see in Oblivion, for example, with Matt Damon, every single time he's brought it up, it's always been really cool looking art. It's always amazing, but it has just not been within scope. But power armor, so to speak, there is an opportunity where technically, yes, power armor will exist in the game in a way, and yes, you will get to experience that. Maybe.
Oh, so maybe there will be a mimetic power armor. I think that was
You'll never be able to predict it. You will never predict it. You won't know
I
what it will
mean,
be.
jumping into like the GOC and further likenesses to 40K lore and their inspirations, not only do they have these mech suits that I forgot about, but they also, there's this great article on the wiki that I wish I could think of the number right now. And for anyone who needs to do this in their life, whenever I'm looking for something on the wiki I can't remember, I just type SCP, blankety blank, whatever terms I can remember. And usually Google saves me here because wiki.search is terrible. And so it never saves me on that front. But all I can remember of this article is not the stuff that's in it, but the vibe of it. Because it's an end of the world-esque scenario where the GOC and multiple other groups of interest, including the Foundation, have to come together to build a Pacific Rim to fight kaiju.
So 5 GOC combine and become a super GOC.
And so it's like the Foundation and the GOC and a couple other GOI, and they build a mech, and they do. Is it 5514? Is that what people are telling me in the chat? I hope it is. Boom. SCP Battle Wiki, it looks like it is. Dragon Slayer. Thank you, chat.
The SCP Voltron, as whatchamacallit, Sentai. Andre Gunawan asks, can the Foundation build a containment chamber that can withstand a tendril barrage devastator attack, especially if they're containing SCP similar to Alex Mercer? So, all right, so you watched the video essay on Alex Mercer and Prototype, Sherman. What's your estimation on, what class is Alex Mercer? Could they contain him? Would that tendril barrage give a little trouble?
Well, reminder that due to basic safe Euclid-Keter ratings of containment difficulty, a human being of any kind is by default Euclid. Because they can't be safe. Safe means you can lock it in a box and just leave it alone, it'll stay. Euclid means that it is mobile / trying to escape, which obviously most human anomalies are. So we're starting at Euclid, but then the abilities of those tendrils and all brings me over to, what's that C game? It's not Carnivore. It's an indie game. It's got a red meat thing running around a 2D facility.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Carrion.
Carrion, yeah.
Carrion, yes. So Carrion is basically what I imagine is a humanless Alex Mercer. And it seemed pretty Keter to me. And even further, since Alex Mercer was in that whole city that was taken over, we're looking at a massive possible K-class scenario depending on how widely that goes. And if deciding that humanity is all just food for the virus, if that spreads any further, we're looking at a K-class scenario. But at basic level, we're looking at a Keter-class entity.
All right, so we've got an official classification for everyone's favorite Prototype Man. Talent Stuff asks, will we see some of the specific characters from Area 12 in-game, e.g. Carlisle, Blythe, Author 4?
Yes.
So not everyone's going to be a talking voice on a radio. We will see these characters. And who knows, maybe we'll see cosplayers that whatchamacallit, Dr. Sherman can react to in very entertaining YouTube shorts in the future. I certainly hope.
Ooh.
Yeah. You might even see characters from the article itself. Who knows?
A Genic person asks, are our GOC guys in Antarctica wearing white suits, or are they differently equipped? I don't know why they wouldn't wear those white suits are awesome. I think they're like one of the most iconic designs of Frey's produced. Is there a reason that they won't wear the white suits?
Yeah, they're wearing the white suits because they're not really sure what they're going into, and of course they don't want to be spotted. They don't want to stand out too much. They kind of want to go in the most discreet way possible, because a lot of this stuff is meant to be a secret, and if they're wearing orange, I don't think that's going to help them much whenever people are pointing guns at them, right?
That is a good point, and it's also probably good for camouflage. Silenced asks, speaking of Devastator, time for my usual question. Any updates on that, Social and Bishop? So the ever so loved Devastator creature. Is there anything more you can say on that?
Let's see if I can find a picture.
Oh, there's more Devastator lore.
Yeah, give me a minute here. What's probably painful for most of you that are watching right now or listening is that I have one monitor in front of me that's got this community event and all these people that want to know more and see more stuff. And on this other monitor, I have all this stuff I'm looking at. That's pretty much everything, all the way to the end of the game. And you can't see it, but it's so close, yet so far.
All your
screen shared,
answers. If he just screwed up, if he just did, one little button could give you all your answers. But good thing Trey has good trigger control. Dr. Sherman, what are your thoughts on the abandonment of the in memoria item canon? I don't know if I'm saying that right. In memoria ADY idiom canon?
I think it's pronounced aditum.
Okay.
And yep, this is outside of my realm. So I do not know anything about this regarding what's in it or how the canon was formed or why it was abandoned. I'm wondering if there's I'm looking at the notes of it. Malice, metaphysician, excellent sarcasm author. Akamoto, Malice again. They're not mentioning there why it was stopped. Project said, when it comes to canon in general, it's not important whether it's active or not. It's just here. All you need to know well enough about the canon is to read it. And if you want to write for it, there you go. Active or not, it rests here. So I guess like any other canon, the big deal is if someone wants to add to it, they are fully able to if they just want to pick up the torch. That is how canons work. Sometimes the authors have a series, and that series will be part of a canon, but then they finish their series and they're done. They've run out of ideas or time to write. Eventually, the next person picks up the torch. That's the beauty of SCP canon. Anyone could jump in if they want to.
So that's the beauty of it. If you want to do it, you gotta get your Google Doc up and you gotta learn some HTML, and you can bring the addendum canon back. The power is
Please
for
share
you.
your drafts. Please share your drafts in a sandbox on SCP Wikidot. Please don't share a Google Doc. We get so annoyed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I never realized that was the form of the etiquette. Well, at least in terms of drafting it out. But there you go. Use the sandbox. Don't just put it in the Google Doc. EFD asks, question: if Pietro died at the end of the article of 5K, wouldn't that mean that anything UIU or even GOC efforts would be for nothing? Just a bad ending, right? I mean, we are nothing but pawns compared to the full picture, right? Nothing good is bound to come from us, right?
So, the ending of the game, I know it. I can't tell you what the ending is, but bleak is definitely something that I wouldn't expect to be absent. This is a very bleak story, and I wouldn't expect rainbows and sunshine.
So you might not get a happy end.
Dog, off tangent. I for the first time 2 to 3 weeks ago, started playing Cyberpunk 2077. Had never seen anything about it, just heard about it by name, and was like, you know what? I'm in a break between my previous game I was playing and Pirate Yakuza hasn't released yet, so let's try Cyberpunk. What could possibly go wrong? It's on sale. Oh my heart, that game is bleak. Ooh, there's no good endings for anyone. It hurts.
I hear it's much better after the update. I do love the like Engoodening story. Came out as like this broken mess, and now it's like thanks to the really good anime and a lot of hard work, it's kind of come out the other side as like, real success story, even if it doesn't really have a good.
It's a Again, I played it on a PlayStation 5 and it ran like a dream, no crashes. I heard about the terrible launch, which is why I didn't pick it up in the first place. But man, it was a great freaking game on PS5. Highly recommend.
I need to.
But oof, not if you need any sort of happiness in your life.
Well, hopefully we will eventually have that, hurts kind of bad, but makes you feel good because it's kind of not a happy ending canon of great work. Bitter endings are always well done. They always stick with you. I guess, would you say like most endings are in the SCP canon, are there more happy or like sad stories you had to like take a stab and get?
We have a literal tale on the wiki. I can curse in this stream, right? I haven't even checked. We're good?
Yeah, I think
I don't
so.
fucking care.
It is literally titled regarding you want happy endings, fuck you. And that's kind of the mood a lot of the time.
So sometimes, a good old SCP article is like what you go in after you want to have a hot shower and just, you don't necessarily want to have like a happy story.
You know what, Isaac, if you haven't seen it, you should look into SCP-1762, Where the Dragons Went.
Oh, I have not. Is that like an article or is that a?
Oh, it's wonderful. You'd love it.
It's a very well regarded article.
It's very whimsical and colorful and vibrant.
I will definitely have to read. All right, so we are.
I look forward to your social media post after you read it. I can't wait to see it.
1762, right?
Yep.
That's the one.
So on that note, we are at our 15 minutes. Trey should probably get back to that really cool gameplay trailer, which I know he has a tight deadline on. I also have a day job, so I need to go get ready and get to sleep, get ready for sleepy time. But I feel like to end the note on one final SCP lore, I have one final challenge for Dr. Sherman. What are your top 5 favorite SCP articles of all time?
All right, but can I have more than 5? Because I've got a list that I always say right now.
All right. 10. If you got 10, go for it.
All right, here we go. First of all, disclaimer, I don't claim my SCPs. I've written 7 of them. That's cheating. I don't list mine. So if you want to see mine, they're on my author page. But all SCP articles that are my favorites that I did not write. 3999 is my first love. I'm at the center of everything that happens to me. It's a super meta article, and I love super meta articles. It's crazy, it's horror, it's surreal, gives you a little bit of those House of Leaves vibes. I love it. 3043, Murphy Law, the film noir detective SCP, and all of its sequels count as part of its story. Amazing. 3043. 008-J is Jeff. And Jeff is just this friendly bloke who shows up at Foundation sites uninvited, somehow gets past security, and we have to deal with that somehow. And it's a very funny short little article. SCP Spooky-J is another comedy article, and it's a skeleton that yells at you. And it's very mean to one dude on site. And it gives me very Rick and Morty yelling vibes. Humor. SCP-5031, yet another murder monster, is the heart tug string one. It's so good. It's so soft and lovely. And has very good meta storytelling about the wiki as a whole. SCP-5175 is the Death Knife. And the Death Knife is the story of a weeaboo mall cop who comes across an ancient cursed blade and becomes a Foundation Mobile Task Force soldier because of it. and it's amazing. SCP 5320, the glorious fish that just goes on forever, is one of Radiger's SCPs. Radiger is the most brilliant comic SCP writer about the mundanity of working at the Foundation. And this is my favorite one of hers. And then SCP 8980 just dropped with this last Halloween anthology. 8980 might be the most fucked up article on the site.
Really?
It is mortifying. I was at work the day it dropped. I teach ballroom dancing, and so for my day job. And so I was at work with my students. This article drops. I start reading a little bit in between classes. I have a 5-minute break. Next 5-minute break, I read a little more. I get a dinner break for an hour. I spend the whole dinner break reading this article. I'm not done reading it. At the end of the night, instead of driving home, I sat there for another hour and read the article and then commented on it and then thought about it for days because it is horrible. It is the most heart gut destroying SCP I think I've ever seen. When people say that new SCP is not good, they ain't reading the wiki because, oh my god.
You said 8580?
8980.
8980. I'm going to check that out.
It is trigger warning for workplace abuse and abuses of the system. And yeah, ergophobia is the name of it.
Ergophobia?
Oh,
what is ergophobia?
Fear of work.
Oh, god dang. I've never heard of that. So is it almost like Severance, the SCP?
I mean, I haven't seen Severance, actually. I need to get on that.
It's good.
But what I do know is that you ever had a bad boss and they treated you worse than everyone else?
Yeah.
It's that to a billion. It's so bad. And you're talking about, I was sitting there reading this and I'm like, they got to solve this. They got to fix this. They got to make things right. And they don't, because this is the Foundation. You want happy endings? Fuck you. 8980 is horrifying.
I'm going to add those both. I'm going to email them to myself, and I'll have to make sure that I get caught up. Those sound like some really solid recommendations. So, are we missing anything? Did we hit all 10 of your favorite articles?
That is my shopping list of favorite SCPs.
Well, I think you gave some really good reading. You gave some good reading for me. I look forward to it. I have a high threshold for trauma, so I look forward to seeing how good these articles are. So
I hope so. I hope you do have a really high threshold for trauma.
So thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you so much for Sherman for joining us on this little deep dive into SCP lore and GOC lore. It has been an absolutely pleasure evening. As you all know, SCP-5K Update 016 is hitting Wednesday, March 5th. It is coming. You've waited. It is finally going to be delivered. We gave you a date. There's no pushing back. There are no extra bugs. There are no design features that need to be gray boxed. This bad boy is hitting on time, and we to get it into your hands and cannot wait to see your reactions to it. Before we close off, as always, stay tuned to all of our socials on Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube, Facebook. We will update it. Sherman, where can they find you?
You can find us at Site42 on YouTube, TikTok, then your lower tier social media. We've got our Twitter and our Blue Sky and our threads. Anywhere you are, we're making sure to beam the SCP Foundation your way.
So make sure to follow Site42 on all your relevant socials. Send them, make sure that you leave a comment saying, I loved you on the Affray live stream. Thank you so much. And any final thoughts from you, Bishop?
No, this was great. Thank you, Sherman, for coming out and doing this with us. It was a lot of fun. if anyone wants just one more recommendation for an SCP to look up, I like trying to throw out ones that people don't know about too much. SCP 4431. If you like things like The Thing, which is what really inspired a lot of the stuff we did with 610 in point 16, I would give that one a look.
And there you have it. A really great SCP article recommendation from Trey Bishop. All right, with that, I bid you adieu. Have a wonderful weekend. And just do what you can to keep yourself occupied. Because as long as you keep on going to sleep, you'll eventually wake up when the next update is available. With that, I bid you adieu.
Remember to secure, contain, protect.
Good night.
Perfect. All right, so we are good on whatchamacallit, YouTube